No tricks, no edits. Just one moment they're there, and the next, they vanished. That's what the security footage showed the night Ethan disappeared. And it all started with flickering lights and a whisper in the freezer. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly as Ethan clocked in at exactly 10:58 p.m. The store was already quiet, the kind of quiet that made your ears notice your own breathing. He slung on his apron, grabbed a metal cart waiting by the stockroom door, and popped in one earbud. The voice of his supervisor, Mr. Jeffers, echoed from behind a shelf. "Hey, Ethan, you're solo tonight after midnight. Just finish up aisles 3 to 6 and hit the freezer last." "Got it." Ethan nodded. "Got it." Jeffers tossed him a ring of keys. "And lock the freezer from the outside when you're done. That thing sticks. Last guy nearly got trapped in there." Ethan gave him a mock salute. "Noted." Avoid getting turned into a popsicle. Jeffers chuckled and made his way toward the back exit. The glass doors hissed open, letting in a gust of warm air before sealing shut behind him. Ethan was alone now, just him in rows of fluorescent-lit aisles lined with silent products. He liked it this way. No customers. No noise. The wheels of his cart squeaked as he pushed it toward aisle 3. The only sounds were a soft hum from the vents and the occasional clink of glass jars. He rolled up his sleeves and got to work. To Ethan, the store felt like a sleeping giant. Still, harmless, and he was the only one awake inside it. For now, by 12:17 a.m., Ethan had gotten into a rhythm. The only sound was the occasional crinkle of cardboard, the low hum of refrigeration, and his sneakers brushing the polished tile. Then, click, the motion sensor lights in aisle 6 flicked on. Ethan froze. He was in aisle 3, 3 aisles away, and the sensors only activated with movement. He leaned out, peering toward the end of the store. Nobody. Just a white glare of the light spilling into the aisle, empty. He chuckled dryly, muttering to himself, probably a bird or something. Still, something in his stomach twisted. He moved quicker after that. At 12:32 a.m., while restocking soups in aisle 4, he turned to grab another can from the box and watched one roll off the shelf on its own. It rolled slowly to a stop by his foot. He picked it up. Nothing strange, no one behind him, no shelf instability. He placed it back and continued, glancing over his shoulder a little more than usual now. Then came the cold. In aisle 5, while stocking cereal, he suddenly felt a chill wash over him. Not a breeze, not AC, but an unnatural cold, like walking into a freezer door left wide open. He rubbed his arms and glanced upward. No vents nearby, just silence and frosted flakes. He didn't linger. At 1:03 a.m., Ethan decided to check the break room. He sat on the lumpy sofa, sipped his soda, and absent-mindedly stared at the surveillance monitor mounted on the wall. The feed was grainy as always, for camera angles played at once. Then one of them glitched. A static burst on cam 9, which pointed toward the back stockroom hallway. The image returned briefly, and in that flickering black and white frame, Ethan saw someone, just for a second, a man, broad shoulders, standing still, wearing a stained butcher's apron and a cap tilted low over his eyes, not moving, not walking, just staring at the camera. The feed glitched again. When it returned, he was gone. Ethan sat frozen, the soda can shaking slightly in his hand. He rewound the footage. Nothing. Just empty hallway. He tried again. Still nothing. "Okay," he whispered to himself. Tired brain. That's all. He got up, grabbed his gloves, and headed back out. But something inside him knew. The store wasn't empty anymore. The clock above the break room buzzed faintly. 1:42 a.m. 1:42 a.m. Ethan had just finished stacking the last row of instant noodles when he heard it. A faint whistle. Not music. Not from his earbuds. Off key. For notes. Repeating. Hollow. He pulled out his earbud. Why. The sound came from a freezer hallway. Then a dragging noise. SCRRK. Pause SCRRK. He stiffened. "Jeffers," he called. "Someone back there?" No answer. Then the whistle again. He grabbed the flashlight and walked toward the back hallway. The whistling stopped. The dragging didn't. He reached the corridor that led to the walk-in freezer and meat prep room, a rarely used area left over from when the store had its own butchers decades ago. Now, it was mostly empty, used for dry storage and overflow ice. At the end of the hallway, something caught the light from his flashlight. A shape, hanging. He stepped closer. It was an old rusted meat hook, swaying gently, not swinging like it had just been bumped. No, this was slow, steady, like someone had just let go of it. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He aimed the flashlight around, and there was nothing there, no carts, no workers, no footsteps. Just that hook, turning slowly in place. "Hello," he tried again. Still nothing. He backed away slowly. The cold from the freezer crept down the hallway like fog. The hook was still swaying when he turned and walked. No, hurried back to the main store floor. He didn't hear the whistling again that night. But when he passed back through that hallway later, the hook was gone. Ethan didn't return to stocking right away. His hands were still shaking as he stepped into the break room again and shut the door behind him. The silence was louder now. He could still hear the faint sound of the meat hook swaying in his head. He walked up to the surveillance monitor. The thought that had been clawing at his brain wouldn't go away. Check the footage, rewind, watch it again. So he did. He tapped into cam 3, which covered the main aisles. He rewound earlier when he'd been stocking soup cans. The feed was grainy and normal until he spotted it. There he was on the screen, kneeling and stacking cans with his back to the camera. And then someone appeared behind him, standing silently at the far end of the aisle, just watching. The image glitched slightly, but Ethan could make out the apron, broad shoulders, and the unmistakable 1950s style butcher's cap. Ethan watched, heart pounding, as his on-screen self turned and the butcher was gone, just like what had happened in real life. He swallowed hard. His hand hovered over the monitor, shaking. This couldn't be real. Couldn't be. He grabbed his phone and dialed Mr. Jeffers, the night supervisor. The line rang twice before a groggy voice picked up. "Ethan? Everything all right." "Mr. Jeffers," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "That hallway by the freezer, you said it's closed off, right?" "Yeah. The back prep area? Locked tight. Has been for years. We don't use it." "Why?" "I was just there," Ethan whispered. "It was open. There was a meat hook hanging from the ceiling. I heard someone." Jeffers paused and sighed. "Look, that part of the building used to be a butcher's station back in the 70s. Long before this became a supermarket. It's sealed. Even management doesn't go in there." Ethan's throat tightened. "I was just in there, sir. I walked down that hall. The door was open. Cold air was pouring out. I saw the hook, and I heard someone whistling." Another long pause. "Ethan, are you alone right now?" "Yes." "Then leave that hallway alone. Don't go near the freezer. Just finish your stock and wait for morning staff. I'll check it first thing." The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone. He replayed the footage again. This time, he paused it and leaned in. The butcher was still there, only for a second, but clearer now. And this time, he was smiling. The aisles felt longer now. Wider, empty, but not silent. Something had changed. Ethan tried to keep his head down, focus on finishing the cereal shelf, but his ears kept twitching, listening for sounds that shouldn't exist. A footstep that wasn't his. A breath that didn't belong. A shadow where no one was walking. Then it came. His name. Ethan. A whisper. Soft, warped, stretched like an old cassette tape, filtering to the store's intercom system. It wasn't the usual page tone. No beeps, no clicks. Just his name. Ethan looked up, every muscle in his body frozen. The intercom speaker above aisle 5 buzzed faintly, then went silent again. He backed away slowly, heart hammering. "I didn't imagine that," he muttered. Then came the second voice. This time it wasn't a whisper. It was the faint, distant sound of a child sobbing. Not over the intercom, not inside his head. From the back hallway, near the freezer, he should have left. Walked out the front doors and never looked back. But something pulled at him. Not just fear, something else, like a thread. He couldn't unspool, unless he followed it to the very end. He walked down the same corridor again, back to the freezer area. The lights overhead flickered dimly, humming like dying bees. Each step echoed louder than it should. And then the freezer door creaked open on its own. Ethan stood frozen, staring into the cold. The crying grew louder inside, soft, desperate, childlike. "Hello?" he whispered. "Is someone in there?" No answer. Just the sound of a quiet whimper. He stepped forward. He turned to look behind him, and that's when the door slammed shut. Bang! The sound echoed like thunder. The light flickered, then held. Ethan was locked inside. At 5:58 a.m., the automated doors of Fairview Grocery slid open with their usual hiss. Nancy, the morning manager, walked in first, coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other. She glanced around, expecting to hear the usual hum of shelf stocking, maybe the squeak of a cart, or Ethan's usual off-key humming from down an aisle. But the store was silent. No carts. No humming. No Ethan. "Ethan," she called out, but no one answered. She checked the break room. His backpack was still there, his half-finished soda, his jacket on the chair. The stock cart sat abandoned in aisle 7, halfway through a row of cereal boxes. Her stomach turned. She checked every aisle, back room, and freezer door, but saw nothing. She unlocked the manager's office and logged into the surveillance system. At 2:03 a.m., the footage showed Ethan walking toward the back hallway. He stopped briefly in front of the walk-in freezer. Fog curled around his legs. Then he stepped inside. The timestamp ticked on. 2:04, 2:05, 2:06. No one came out. The camera never glitched, never skipped. He simply never returned. Nancy leaned closer to the screen. Her finger hovered over the rewind button. She reversed it, slowly this time, frame by frame. Just as Ethan stepped through the freezer doorway, someone else appeared behind him for just a single frame. A man wearing a blood-stained butcher's apron, heavy gloves, an old-fashioned cap, and the blank, glassy-eyed stare of someone who wasn't alive anymore. He stood behind Ethan, not moving, as Ethan stepped inside. And then he was gone. Nancy sat frozen for several minutes, her coffee cold in her hand. Later, the police were called. They combed the store, the freezer, the footage. No sign of forced entry. No signs of Ethan. No explanation for the missing boy who walked into a freezer and never came out. The footage was eventually filed away, copied, and sealed with the incident report. No charges were filed. No suspect identified. But the night staff never lasted long after that. 2 weeks later, the night shift reopened. The store didn't make a public fuss about Ethan's disappearance. No press release. No banners. No signs. The freezer was double-locked now. A corporate memo said it was for safety reasons. But word got around town. People whispered. Parents asked questions. Some employees quit. But the store stayed open. Because stores always do. Claire never liked grocery shopping, but the little store on the edge of town felt especially wrong. The lights buzzed overhead like dying insects. The shelves were crooked and half empty. The air stale with something too sweet, like meat gone sour. She had only moved here 2 weeks ago to care for her aging aunt. She didn't know many people, didn't know many stores either. She grabbed what she needed, crackers, tea, and a few cans of soup. One can in particular caught her eye, unlabeled, slightly dented, buried at the back of a dusty shelf like someone didn't want it found. "Special clearance stock," said the man behind the register, Mr. Darnell, the only employee in sight. He smiled, but his eyes looked far too empty to match. Claire didn't ask questions. She paid and left, but as she walked to her car, the hairs on the back of her neck prickled. She didn't know why. She just knew something about that can feel wrong. It was a quiet evening. Claire stood alone in her aunt's narrow kitchen, stirring a pot of water on the stove. The house creaked softly with age, with groaning, pipes hissing, as if it too was trying to adjust to her presence. Dinner was simple. Canned soup, the same unlabeled can she'd picked up from the store earlier. She turned it over in her hands. No brand name, no expiry date, just a faint, stamped number near the bottom, number 2197. She wrinkled her nose and slid the can into the opener. The blade clicked, sliced through the lid, and clink. Something heavy shifted inside. Frowning, Claire tipped the can and watched the contents slide out into the pot with a thick, wet slosh. But something didn't slosh. Something hard hit the bottom of the pot. She leaned in and saw it immediately. A square, sealed in clear plastic. She pulled it out with shaking hands and dried it with a paper towel. A Polaroid. Inside the plastic sleeve was a grainy photograph of a child. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with tangled hair and wild, terrified eyes. Her mouth was open mid-scream, as if the photo had captured her in the middle of begging for her life. Across the bottom of the photo, in thick, frantic black marker, were 2 words. Help me. Claire dropped it and stumbled back. The kitchen spun. What was this? A prank? A mistake? No, the soup was sealed. There was no way someone could have slipped this in after fact. It had been in there the whole time. Her hands trembled as she picked up the can again and stared at the number. Number 2197. It suddenly didn't feel like a product code. It felt like a label, a count, or a catalog. And whatever was in that can wasn't supposed to be eaten. The Polaroid sat on the passenger seat, sealed in a plastic bag Claire had found in her kitchen drawer. She didn't want to touch it again. She didn't want to look at it either, not at the girl's eyes, frozen in fear. But she also couldn't pretend she hadn't seen it. The grocery store looked even worse in daylight. Its faded sign, Meadow Grove Market, creaked in the wind. The parking lot was cracked and empty. As she stepped inside, the bell above the door gave a hollow ding that echoed like it didn't want to be heard. Inside, the store was colder than she remembered. Dim lighting flickered overhead. The aisles stood like narrow corridors in a hospital no one visited anymore. Mr. Darnell stood behind the register, just like before. Same posture. Same half-smile, like he hadn't moved since she left. "Good afternoon," he said in that flat, polite tone. "Welcome back." Claire walked up and held out the can. "I bought this here yesterday." He looked down at it without taking it. Then he raised his eyes, slow and calm. "We don't sell that brand." Claire blinked. "What?" "We don't carry unlabeled goods. Health codes." She pulled out the plastic bag with the Polaroid and slammed it gently on the counter. "So this just magically appeared in my soup?" He looked at the photo. No reaction. "I think you should leave, Mississippi." His voice was still calm, but firmer now, like a door starting to shut. Claire stared at him. "Do you even know what's in your stockroom? Do you know what I found in that can?" Darnell didn't blink, didn't look down. "You should leave," he repeated. And then something in the air shifted. She noticed it, faint at first, from behind the counter, just past the swinging employee door, a cold draft, and something else, a sound whimpering, high-pitched, childlike. Claire stepped back, her eyes drifting toward the metal door at the far end of the store. A dented sign hung on it, "Employees Only." She hadn't noticed it before. Or maybe it hadn't been there before. Mr. Darnell turned slightly, placing himself between her and the back hallway. "No entry beyond that point," he said. "For your safety." Claire didn't respond. She just backed out slowly, the photo still sealed in her hand, her heart pounding louder than the bell that jingled as she exited the store. But she wasn't done, not yet. Claire didn't go home. She drove straight to the town library, a low, crumbling brick building that smelled of old paper and forgotten memories. She needed answers. At the back of the library, behind a dusty local archives desk, she found Mrs. Evelyn, the kind of librarian who had lived in the town longer than the street signs. Her eyes were sharp, but her movements were slow, like turning pages in a book that might fall apart. And then something in the air shifted, that might fall apart. But the case was closed. The evidence never surfaced. No bodies were found. Claire's stomach twisted. She pulled out her phone and stared again at the can's code. Number 2197. It wasn't a product number. It was a count, a label, a registry. How many had there been before that one? Back home, Claire tried to sleep, but her dreams were filled with rusted shelves, cold air, and children screaming behind metal doors. At exactly 3:19 a.m., she woke to the sound of something tapping in the kitchen. She got up slowly. On the floor, beneath her pantry door, was a second photo, pushed just far enough under for her to see it. Another child, eyes wide, mouth open, scribbled on the bottom, "Why won't you help us?" Claire screamed. The first photo was still sealed in her drawer upstairs. The second photo sat untouched on the kitchen table. Claire hadn't moved it. Couldn't. It hadn't just appeared. It had been delivered, slipped under her pantry door like a message or a warning. She spent the rest of the night with every light in the house turned on. Every creak, every groan of the old floorboards felt closer now, like the house wasn't just settling, it was listening. The next day, Claire checked every can in her pantry. 12 cans, all from different brands, different days. But one caught her eye, the last one on the left, a small, dented tin she didn't remember buying. It looked just like the first. No label, no expiry, just a stamp number. Number 2198. Her breath caught in her throat. She picked it up carefully and held it to her ear. She heard nothing, but when she set it on the counter, it tipped itself onto its side. It rolled gently, stopped with a number facing her, like it wanted to be seen. That night, the tapping returned. This time, not just in the kitchen, but from the walls. The attic, the space beneath the floorboards. Soft repeating, pleading. She pressed her ear to the wall and froze. She heard whispers that are faint and childlike. "Let's out, please." She staggered back, trembling. The next morning, she burned both photos, tossed the ashes down the sink, poured bleach after them. By evening, a third photo was waiting for her, pinned to her bathroom mirror. This one is different. It wasn't child. It was her, taken from behind, inside the grocery store. She was looking at the soup shelf. In the blurred reflection of the freezer door behind her, something tall, wearing white, standing still, and was watching. Something wasn't just trying to reach out anymore. Something wanted in. Claire waited until after midnight. She knew the store would be closed, knew the front doors would be locked, but she also knew whatever was happening didn't follow normal rules anymore. She parked 2 streets over and crept through the alley behind Meadowgrove Market. The night air was unnaturally still, the moonlight dull like something was leaching color from the world itself. Behind the store, she found the old delivery door, rusted shut, but not locked. She pried it open with a tire iron. Inside, the store was pitch black. No humming refrigeration units, no flickering bulbs, just silence. She moved slowly through the aisles with a flashlight, each step echoing louder than the last. Then she reached the employee's only door. It was ajar. The hallway beyond was narrow, lined with peeling paint and faded signs from the old meat plant. Sterilization area. Packaging. No admittance without authorization. As she moved deeper, her flashlight dimmed for just a second, and that's when she heard it. A low, distant scraping, metal on metal, chains dragging. She passed a rusted chute labeled, "Waste Only," then found a stairwell descending into darkness. At the bottom, a steel-reinforced door, and carved into the wall above it, scrawled with a jagged nail, "We're still inside." Claire took a breath and pushed the door open. The room beyond was freezing. Shelves lined the walls, not with food, but with rows of unlabeled cans. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Some are coated in dust, others newer, still wet, numbered in sequence. Hashed, and in the corner, a workstation with a rusted concealer and a blood-stained Polaroid camera. On the wall above it, dozens of Polaroids. Children, crying, screaming, silent. Some of them had been crossed out. Others were labeled returned. Then Claire heard breathing. Slow, heavy, right behind her. She turned, and standing there, barely lit by the flashlight's edge, was a tall figure in a white apron, his face obscured by shadow. He raised one gloved hand. In it, a fresh can, number 2200. Claire stood frozen, face to face with the butcher. His gloved hand held the can like an offering. Number 2200. Her number. She backed away slowly, the flashlight trembling in her grip. The figure didn't speak, didn't breathe, just stared. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of whispers, breaths, children's cries trapped in tin. As she moved toward the workstation, the floor creaked underfoot. She could see now. The canning machine was ancient, heavy, and powered by something older than electricity. The Polaroid camera beside it blinked. Still functional, still warm. She opened a drawer. Inside, a small leather-bound logbook, stained and brittle with time. Inside it, dates, descriptions, names. Subject number 2174, male 6, screamed during sealing. Subject number 2197, female 7, partial recovery. Photo damaged. Hashtag 2200 in progress. The entry was blank beneath it. Claire dropped the book and stumbled back. The butcher was gone, but behind her, the stack of cans began to rattle. All of them, thousands of them. A soft metallic clinking filled the room, like fingernails on metal lids, like something inside them was trying to claw its way out. Suddenly, the Polaroid camera snapped. Click. Whir. She spun. No one was holding it. A fresh photo spat out. She picked it up with trembling hands. It was her, standing in the basement, in front of the shelf of cans. Behind her, the butcher, one hand on her shoulder. She dropped it, grabbed a nearby crowbar, and turned to the cans. "I'm getting you out," she whispered. She jammed the crowbar into the shelf and knocked the first can down. Then another, and another. The seals burst open. Thick, black liquid spilled out, and with it, air, cold, screaming, voices, so many voices. The room exploded with energy, shells crashing, lights flickering, the butcher roaring like something not human. One by one, the spirits poured out, rising like steam, swirling around the room, children's faces forming in the fog. They didn't scream anymore. They sang, a soft, high-pitched lullaby, the kind no one had sung for them. And in a final deafening shriek, the basement walls cracked. The butcher lunged, and everything went dark. The fire marshal's report said it was an electrical fault. The official story was simple. Old grocery store ignites in a freak basement fire. Total loss. No casualties. No cause found. They didn't find Claire. They didn't find the photos, or the cans, or the butcher. But they did find one thing, recovered from the rubble in perfect condition. A single, unopened tin can. Unlabeled, sealed, still warm. Number 2200. A week later, the demolition crew finished clearing the site. They loaded debris into a dumpster behind a fenced-off zone and tossed in metal shelves, scorched signs, and broken glass. One worker, young, bored, and half listening to his music, picked up the can. "Weird," he muttered. "No brand." He slipped it into his backpack. Figured it might be funny to show his friends. That night, he placed it on his kitchen counter. As he left the room, he swore he heard something inside, whispering,